So, Scott, it really is great to connect with you. I've known your work for quite some time, and I'm interested in your new book, which we'll get into, and some of the other things that you've done. So, welcome. I look forward to delving in more deeply with the work that you've been doing. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jed. It's a real delight to be here and chat with you.
Yeah. So the new book, which I recently heard about, is called Rise Above, Overcome a Victim Mindset, Empower Yourself, and Realize Your Full Potential. Intriguing. I've gotten into it a little bit with the material they sent, certainly a timely and much needed book. But
Oh,
before we jump into that, I'd like to have you just introduce yourself a bit to the audience. Little about who you are and how you come to be doing the work that you're doing.
I am Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman, and I'm a humanistic psychologist and a cognitive scientist. I've been interested in psychology my whole life, and um, always wondered as a kid why people are the way they are. How talent works, how why are gifted kids. I was in special ed, I was very excluded from mainstream children as a kid. So it gave me a lot of time to kind of observe humans like I'm from a different planet or something.
Interesting. So I like to, kind of have people say a little bit about their origin story, kind of where you grew up. You shared a little bit about your background, but what kind of family you were in and how your kind of origins and some of your early experience have impacted, your interests and the work that you're doing.
I grew up in Philadelphia, from a single was a only child, and actually suburbs of Philadelphia. And um, I'm not sure exactly what information you want to know from me.
Oh, well, just a little bit about you said a little bit about the background of feeling kind of, in school, some challenges,
Well,
only child, any other things about your
uh,
early life that has influenced some of your interests and some of the direction you've gone?
yeah, gotcha. Well, I always was a very creative, highly sensitive kid, and it was really not looked upon well. Um, I was very imaginative. I had a hearing issue where I really had a lot of fluid in my ears, had trouble processing things in real time. And they put me in special ed for that, but they really didn't have a diagnosis for me. They really didn't know what to do with me. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I had a special ed teacher in ninth grade. I was kept in special ed till ninth grade, and the teacher kind of took me aside, and teacher did take me aside and said, what are you still doing here? She saw my frustration, and it really inspired me to take myself out. I asked to be, if I could break out of special ed and see what I was capable of, and I've been on quite a learning journey to see what I'm capable of and see what I can contribute to this world.
That's interesting. Part of the reason I'm asking is I identify with a lot of what you say. I'm an only child. I grew up in a family, in my case, that just didn't understand who I was, and it really took me years and years to just feel embodied as a relational person. I spent a lot of time alone, a lot of time in the fantasy world and out in nature talking to trees because humans seemed really, kind of disconnected and scary. So I kind of know a little bit about at least from my experience. So I'm interested in a little bit of how that has impacted us. And I know I continue to be on a journey of learning and I know from what I know about your work that you certainly have been a prolific searcher and sharer of experience, which I've really appreciated.
Thank you, Jed. Were you in Sensitive Men Rising?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you more about that, but yeah, I was interviewed fairly late on, I think, when I heard about the film, and I that's how I knew you were connected with it. I thought, oh wow, there's so I will jump into that in a minute, but I wanted to step back a little bit to Abraham Maslow.
Ah,
And I had the good fortune of I'd read about Maslow in school when I was in graduate school in the 1960s, and I had the good fortune of meeting him and having some interaction. And he definitely was a mentor to me in my learning about his view of the world and so on. And I had read your book. That's why I just kind of hold it up for
wow.
the audience. Transcendence, the new science of self-actualization. And I said when I read it, it just so resonated with me because I could feel Maslow's presence in your writing. So I was interested in how you got connected with Maslow and how you came to write that book.
Well, you met Maslow, right?
I did. Yeah.
What year was that? 60s?
It was in the 60s. I had mentioned I was involved uh, in a therapeutic community program called Synanon. And Maslow had come to visit Synanon at one point, the
No.
Synanon House, and actually in Santa Monica. There was one in San Francisco where I spent some time learning, not because I was an addict or in recovery, but there was a time when Synanon came to the university when I was at Berkeley and wanted to share the experience of the community and the healing community. And Maslow had come to Synanon. He had heard about them or had been invited, and he had discovered there and had shared in some of his writing how his view of the abilities of people to tolerate kind of very direct, almost attacking kind of therapy. And he said he didn't realize how strong people were, and his involvement with Synanon kind of gave him a different perspective. So that was the context in which I met him in Synanon in Santa Monica in the 60s. I can't remember what exactly year that was, but between 1965 and 1970, I was involved with Synanon. So it was during those years that I met him there.
You actually talked to him.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was like I had only read about him and read his books. It was one of in graduate school. I was very interested in humanistic psychology, and he was, one of the gurus. I met Carl Rogers just fortuitously, who was another one of the founders. I met Carl Rogers kind of in the later part of his life, so I really was very fortunate to meet some of these really iconic foundational people in the field of psychology.
You ever meet Roll May?
I did not. I didn't meet him.
It's really incredible, really incredible. And yeah, like your own work is feels very humanistic and very caring about men, which is I don't know if society really cares about men, uh, you know. So I really think that your work is so important.
Well, thank you. And so say a little bit about how you got connected with Maslow. How did you get learning about his work, and how did that get translated into the Transcend book?
Well, I never met him.
Huh? Yeah, most people haven't. He's kind of, at least of that are alive today.
But as I said in my book, as I dedicated my book to him,
Yeah.
to a friend I've never met, he said, he had a lecture at Esalen where he said, I feel like I can be friends with people from the past that I've never met, because I
Yeah.
read their work so much, though he admits it's a pretty one-sided relationship. And I felt the same. I felt like a great connection to him and his thinking, went down a huge rabbit hole for 5 years as I was working on my book Transcend. Went to the Mazo archives, the library, sat there and for days and just read as many unpublished things he written, letter correspondences. Things really got into his head. I read his two diary journal, and I thought there was a book there. I thought like there's a way of I want to see how his research up to modern day science. I want to see how, um, uh, what I could do to test some of the ideas, which ones would stand that would still, hold up. Because he didn't do a lot of scientific testing. I really see him more as a philosopher,
Yeah.
psychologist, especially towards the latter part of his life. I think earliest in his career, when he did work on rats, he did the best scientific work, but he really became a really good philosopher. And so I thought there'd be a book there, and I'm really interested in human potential and interested in the farther reaches of human nature. So his writings really inspired me tremendously.
Well, I can say from having, read his early work and most of the things that were published that were popularly known, I thought you did a just magnificent job, like I said, not only in extending, the whole notion of self-actualization into some, more tangible and I think useful and broader context, but you really captured, like I said, I felt like I was in his presence again when I read your book. It was like, wow, it was as though, hey, Abe is now, kind of speaking through this younger guy, and it was like, whoa, here you are again. And so anybody who has some both interest in that field that has certainly heard about self-actualization and the hierarchy and all of that. You both bring it to life and put a whole nother level of understanding. So I really I appreciate it and want to honor you for your your scholarship and your humanity and your getting to the feel of the man and the work that he's doing.
You think I represented him well?
I really do. Like I said, uh, I knew him fairly briefly, directly, but
Amazing.
when you meet somebody like that in the flesh and you have a chance to feel their presence, and then you read things that some of his books, particularly the later ones, you really felt his humanity and the studies that he did on, human potential and positive psychology really were exemplary. And yeah, I think you really got the man and the work really well.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. So you mentioned, I want to jump into it. You had mentioned the film Sensitive Men Rising, which is a documentary. Will Harper was the director. He was the one that had contacted me, had heard of my work and wanted to interview me, which he did. And I had a small part in the film. You had a fairly significant part in the film, which I really appreciated. And I wanted you to talk a little bit because my field is my kind of work and my study and my writing is in the area of what I call gender medicine and men's health. And I was excited when I heard about the film because, as you, I felt that men were in many ways not seen and heard, particularly men like me, who I consider myself very highly sensitive, has been a problem in lots of parts of my life, over sensitivity or being tuned in to things that I see and feel but don't quite understand. And I really appreciated both the scholarship and Elaine Aron and some of the other researchers that had done some of that work. And maybe you could talk about what your understanding is and your connection both with the sensitivity you certainly expressed yourself very directly in the film of your own sensitivity, which I shared and appreciated, and the whole concept of high sensitivity, and particularly as it applies to men.
Um, so What's the specific question?
Yeah, just how you understand highly sensitive men and how you how that expressed itself, both what you know and how you shared in the film, which I thought was very moving, and I hope more people will start to understand not only high sensitivity but how the the unique aspect of it that applies to guys.
Well, thank you. Well, I think that the highly sensitive personality is a particular trait, and it can be in any body. Um, the any body or mind. I don't think, the highly sensitive man, being in a man's body and mind is interesting because it's a bit countercultural. People like to think of men um, as strong, resilient, unemotional. People have, it's depicted in movies. This is sort of like how men are treated, or thought of as that how they should be, and the highly sensitive man kind of breaks some of those things, but the stereotypes. But I have been trying to argue that that's really a false dichotomy. Some of the strongest men are very sensitive. I don't think that these things really need to be at odds with each other. I just think that, like, people expect women to, show these characteristics and exhibit these traits and ways of being, but when a man does, it's like, oh, you gotta inhibit that. You gotta, gotta cover that up. And that's really unfortunate. Some of these traits and characteristics of receptiveness, openness, um, creativity, imagination, and just a general ability to see the subtleties of arguments and nuance and loving nuance. And I mean, these things are immensely beneficial to society, and immensely beneficial, especially now in our society.
Yeah, probably more important now maybe than maybe any other time. We have, as I think we're all aware of, a certain kind of extreme masculinity, and many have written about the strong man personality, which really covers over, I think, a real woundedness that is there. That the highly sensitive man, and when I think about highly sensitive men, and I think about people like you and me who, have a kind of intuitive sense of both the feel of our lives, the emotion of our lives, but also are very successful, or people who meet me in the world and meet you in the world go, hey, guy's doing well, has published a lot of books, published 17 books, and yet I've been married now for 45 years, and I'll just share just a piece of my sensitivity. The woundedness that I grew up in my family, where my very highly sensitive father, who felt he couldn't support his family doing the work that he loved to do, and was became depressed, and he took an overdose of sleeping pills when I was 5 years old, and he didn't die. He ended up in a mental hospital, and uh, I grew up wondering what happened to my father, when it would happen to me, because I felt like, whatever it was that he had, maybe I would get. My mother was certainly afraid of that. And so I grew up with that fear that my sensitivity and his sensitivity would be something that was destructive. And so my in a way, my whole journey of healing uh, began in a men's group, back, now 46 years ago. I met some guys who wanted to get below the surface of the male kind of macho and see who we really were in deep, deep ways. And we were at the time successful guys, but guys who recognized that talking personally in a safe atmosphere with other men was really something healing and valuable. And we've been meeting now for 46 years. Uh, my wife, Carlin, will tell you that part of the reason that she feels our 45-year marriage has been very successful is because I've been in a men's group that's been meeting for 46 years. And four of the guys have died. We, being midlife when we first got together. Now I'm 81 years old, and I'm the elder now that's alive. And four of the other guys have died. Three of us are still here. But that what I learned about that kind of maleness that is both strong, nothing weak about it. Another guy I met in person, I had the great good fortune to meet the Dalai Lama at a conference many years ago. I think it was the year he had gotten the Nobel Peace Prize. And if you've ever been in the presence or even read anything uh, by the Dalai Lama or about him, this is a very strong, powerful man that has been through
Oh, yeah.
a whole lot of pain and being a
Oh, yeah.
peaceful warrior that is anything but weak, and yet highly sensitive, highly caring, highly powerful and available, and still doing his thing. So I really I'm glad to have had a little part in the film. I'm glad that you were in it, and I hope that all of the sensitive men in the world can begin to come together. That's part of my work, is to bring men and organizations together that are doing men's work. And so part of that is talking with you about your past work. And now I want to kind of get into
Oh,
the new book because that
wow.
is, I think, another level of what you're putting out in the world. I'd like to hear a little bit about how you came to write the book, and I know it will be available soon, and I will give people more information when it's available. But talk about how it came to be and who it's for and what we can expect if we have the good fortune to jump into it at some point.
Well, I wrote a new book about how we can really think, have a mindset I call the empowerment mindset that is very yes and that allows us to accept the crappy things that have happened to us in life and also move forward from them in ways that are empowering, not disempowering. I see a victim mindset everywhere I look these days, and I don't think it's doing anyone any favors.
So talk about what how do you do that? What's the
How
book
do you
say?
do it?
Yeah, I also want to mention in the context of the book another aspect of your work in the world is I think you write a regular column for Psychology Today and maybe other places where your work is expressed, and you put a lot out in written form. Uh, so what what what's the essence of the book that you'd like to share at this point of what what this is as a continuation of your earlier work, or a deviation, or where it fits?
It's really kind of like an integration of everything I've studied up to this point, and
Uh-huh.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like, oh yeah, I think it's a deep integration of everything I've done at this point. And I think that, I've studied ability a lot, but how we respond and to our challenges in life and how we view our own capabilities, um, really matters. And far more than I think I ever realized earlier in my career when I studied intelligence, thinking that was the thing to unlock human potential. Really, it's this mindset, that's really important as well as all these other things I've studied. But yeah, this one's a big one. This book has various sections, so don't be a victim to your emotions. Don't take your thoughts and emotions at face value. Like if you're anxious, that's great. That's a sign, but you're allowed to create some distance from these things, and also don't be a victim to your past. As Irv Yalom, the existential psychotherapist, says, sooner or later you have to give up hope. Sooner or later you have to give up hope for a better past. And I think that's very, very true. Um,
Yeah.
what can you do to move forward with your life with agency and hope? And Also, I see a lot of people pleasing tendencies in people that really inhibits their own self-actualization. And so I have a chapter, don't be a victim to your people pleasing. That's a really important one, I think. We tend to get too stuck in that mode of wanting to please others, and we don't take care of ourselves, and we don't balance our own needs. I call it healthy selfishness, taking self-care in a way that doesn't necessarily hurt others. um, I have a whole, I have the whole part one on don't be a victim to various things, but then I have a whole part two of the book, which is like moving toward growth, really seeing the light within yourself, really making sure that you lead from your character strengths. You can get all caught up in, this whole thought spiral of, I need to blame all my problems on society and on this person in that group, and oh, this person's more famous than me, and we can our head can get totally lost in all this stuff. But recentering yourself and reminding yourself, you're pretty awesome right now. Like a lot of people are probably thinking the same stuff about you. They wish they could be you. They wish they could have your life. Just really ground yourself and really um, self connect is a big one as far as I'm concerned, is how you can have self connection. You're not really connected to yourself when you're in a victim mindset. You're kind of outside yourself in this way that's just blaming everything, and really going through this hostility kind of thought pattern that's really not useful for you or for society.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And it seems like we're living in a time in human history where there's both a victim psychology almost in the culture of feeling of some hopelessness, feeling of what we're doing to the environment, and wherever you live, whether it's in California with wildfires or in parts of the country where there's floods. And I mean, it doesn't take expert psychologists to be able to say humanity in many ways and the way it's being practiced today is not in balance with nature. We're undermining our life support system, and that's not conducive to life. And I think we intuitively know something's wrong, but we don't quite know what it is. And often the loud voices in the culture are ones that either say, follow me, I'm the leader, I know what to do, here's a simple solution, we'll build a wall, we'll do this, we'll do that, and all your problems will go away. Or the kind of the opposite is we know who's to blame and let's get them. If only we could, get whoever those people are. And it just feels to me like a real frightened and frightening time. And I think work like yours feels to me very hopeful. It's both pragmatic and real, and doesn't brush under the realities that we face, but it says we don't have to be that way. We don't have to come from that either victim mindset or the blamer mindset, which is kind of the opposite side of the same coin with that. Do you have a sense for you of what we're facing, and how you see the world right now, and what in some way your book, your work, the work of others who you know who may be uh, leading the way to a different kind of future? Do you have hope from your perspective of where we are and how we can move ahead?
I used to have more hope about humans. I feel like most humans are trash right now. Don't you feel that way?
Uh, I wouldn't say that. No, I would actually
I'm just
uh s-
back on that. But
yeah, I think there's a lot of shame and blame going on in the world, and
yeah,
there's a lot of uh actions that quite frankly could end humanity as a
yeah,
species.
definitely.
We're not a very adaptive species from a longevity point of view, and I've I've shared that in my writing, but I don't think it's because as many people believe that there's something inherently flawed about humanity and human beings that if we would simply either or remove ourselves or if- remove them, whoever them is, and leave it to us, that then the planet would be fine. I think we have a very long history of millions of years where we lived in better balance and a better understanding of our place in the community of life than we do now. And I have hope that maybe we can reconnect with that. And I feel like books like yours and philosophies like Maslow's and people that I have learned from and feel still alive for me in my life uh, say, we don't have to do it this way. And that's what I hear in your book.
I appreciate your perspective. I appreciate your energy. I appreciate your kindness. I appreciate your perspective, your being. I can feel your being, and it's wonderful. We need we need more of that in the world right now. But I think that the world that we're going through something right now in a cycle of the world, and I don't know how long it'll last, but it's the energy has shifted in especially in America, and we're on the precipice of something very dangerous. And just positive thinking isn't going to get us out of it. We need to be realistic about what's going on, and also, and I am about empowerment, yes, and thinking, and also doing our own part, like you said. Showing up in the world and being what you want to see in the world and contributing in your own way. I think that's all very important as well, but we also have to, I think, have real eyes open about how the energy has shifted, and the malevolent forces that exist, um, and uh, and we can't just ignore that.
Indeed, I been one of the people that has been writing about both the interesting. I'll share a little story. I hadn't thought about this, but part of my hopefulness comes from the work I've done as part of this men's community, not just my own community of guys that have been meeting for 46 years, but a larger community of men you might call the highly sensitive minority that I feel a part of. But I attended a men's gathering. This was in 1993 in Indianapolis, Indiana. It was called the Wingspan. It was a men's leadership conference, and there were probably 50 or 60 men there at the time. And part of the experience was a traditional Native American sweat lodge. Anybody's been in a sweat lodge, it's a very ancient ritual where you go in and there are various rounds and you put water on hot stones and it's steamy and it's a place for prayer and for gratitude and for visioning to see what our tribe or our community needs in order to heal itself. Well, in the course of this particular ceremony, uh, I was sitting in the back of the sweat lodge, which tends to be the hottest place. And I have asthma is one of the things I grew up with, and I've always had trouble breathing. So a sweat lodge is both an ordeal and an extra ordeal for somebody who uh, doesn't breathe well. And so in the heat of the fourth round, there are traditionally four rounds where you do some work, some praying, some sharing, some chanting, songs, and various ones have various traditions. And then you maybe come out for a short time, go back in, and in the fourth round, it's the last part of it. It's the hottest part. And I was transported into a vision, and the vision I had was of seeing the sinking ship of civilization. And the ship of civilization was sailing along like it always had and always would be, and there were various decks in the ship, and people were trying to get to the top decks where all the light was, and the the captains were, and the first mates, and all the rich accoutrements, and then in the bowels of the ship were the people that were the poor people keeping the engines going. In any event, in the vision, there's a number of people who recognize that there's water coming in, that the ship is sinking, and they try to tell people, but the captain said, no, it's impossible. This is an unsinkable ship. And
Mm.
yet water's coming in. And so in the vision, a few people get up to go over the side of the ship, and they see lettering on the side of the ship that says Titanic. We don't know what that is, but it spells Titanic. And in the vision, the
Wow.
people that got off the ship, rather than getting into a traditional lifeboat like you would on an ocean liner, you had to get into your own boat.
Yeah.
It was a single boat, and you had to row away from the ship, otherwise it would carry you under. And you had infinite number of directions you could go, right? It's anywhere in this cosmos. And so you get in your boat, you row, and in the vision was when everybody was in a certain configuration of communication. And in the vision, the message was you would have to communicate in some different way than the traditional communications. One, because if you shout out, "Hey, I'm over here," the captains of the ship would sink you. They'd kill you. You had to do it quietly, and there was kind of an implication of some kind of a web that would be connected, and a new way of life that was based on an older way of being in the world would find itself emerging as the ship of civilization went under. Well, I reported that in the meeting afterwards. It was pretty powerful, and I had no idea exactly what that meant. What does it mean to get off the ship of civilization? And where does one go? And what does one do? And what does that mean? And so I I've been following the guidance of that. One, be careful who I share this with. So for quite a long time, I just shared it in little groups of guys. I started deciding what that would mean for me. So 1993 was when the vision was. So it's, these number of years later, but it's become clearer to me what that meant as I've, learned more, studied more, visioned more, that really there is something that is ending, in our human culture, and that
Yes.
there is a
Hmm.
dying off that's going to happen, that a lot of people are going to die. Like on the ship, most of the people uh, didn't want to get off the ship. They sang and danced while the music played, and they nobody believed that it would go under until it was too late. And some people did get off, and I think humanity is in trouble. And I think people that study these things and know that a lot of people will die, probably needlessly because of what we're doing to ourselves and each other. But there is a group of people that will not die and pass on whatever wisdom we have. And that's been what my hope has, based on uh, partially the vision, partially what I've interpreted from it, partially as a scientist, explorer. I've been spending 30 years reading and writing and going, okay, so what do we do? And I think there's some things I've learned that I share in my teaching, my writing, my books. I've written 17 books so far, and I write an article every week that I post on my website for those that want to follow my musings. And then I interview people like you who I think are doing significant work, whose work I want to share with the world. So I don't know where that fits in exactly with my hope and my vision, but it seems relevant to what you were asking.
Oh, you're amazing. Kinehera, as my Yiddish grandmother would say. It's we need more people with a positive vision of society. You know, Maslow had a very good, clear image of what the good society would look like. We need a clear image of what the good society would look like. I feel like I have a good, clear image of it. I don't see that image realized. You know, we also need to be adaptable. Yeah, like continuing dancing while the ship is going down is not the way forward.
No,
And so we have to be adaptable. We have to understand. You know, we have to understand people who are very different from us. You know, politically, you may not. I don't know if you're a big MAGA Trump supporter, Jed, but if you are, you know, I'd want to understand you. I'd want to
sure,
understand your what drives you, what
yeah,
motivates. Um, we need to understand each other in the society. We're not really, things are so divisive that people are first and foremost concerned uh, about securing a threat, and that's not the good society.
yeah,
That's an indication of a very ill society, in fact.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And one of the things I do, I walk around my community every day. Live in a small town, and I like to walk, and so I walk. I developed a community gathering process that we call the 10,000 steps, and we uh, I organized it where people come together and they walk this 10,000 step 5 mile loop through the town, and we would have 2 or 3 walks a year where people would come from all over and walk together. And that we did it for 10 years. And I retired from that. And we don't do the walks every, 2 or 3 times a year, but I walk the route and I talk to people and I talk to the birds and I talk to the trees. It's a fairly rural area. And I talked to the MAGA supporters and the Trump supporters because now they have a little more out there and they have stickers out and they've always been here and there's always been liberal people and there's a whole range. And I'm just very interested in our community and what people believe and how we can come together. And I've gotten to know a lot of people that I would not have met. I've learned from people who supported Donald Trump, who um, I have a different view, but uh, I found that there's some very lovely people that I would not have met had I not gone. Tell me about them. So I see you got a sticker. Well, you know what? Tell me about what do you feel and what do you believe? And so I believe, as you do, that there are ways that we can, every place we live in our own lives, in our own communities, we can be curious, we can be interested, we can be connecting, we can live where we live as and provide care and love and support for our fellow humans and the dilemma that we all are part of this human dilemma of difficulty and what we can do to help each other out. That's kind of my passion in life and been an 81-year-old guy who's kind of in the last quarter at least of my life. I'm enjoying the process of connecting and sharing and passing on what wisdom I have. Fortunately, I have uh, 6 grown children, 17 grandchildren, and 3 great grandchildren. So I have the good fortune to have family members I can share with, and good fortune of sharing with the larger community of life that I'm a part of.
beautiful. Wow, you're really living a rich, full life. It's really admirable and inspirational. Do you know my friend Michael Lewis, who's a similar age as you?
I'm not sure. That's a common name. Tell me more.
He was actually an orthopedic surgeon on the Chicago Bulls during their height, but he was friends with Maslow. He wrote a book about his experience with Maslow and Michael Jordan. Uh,
Oh, no, I don't know him. I'd like to hear more about him or find
I
out more.
wrote him an email and said, "Do you know Jed Diamond? I think feel like you two are kindred spirits."
Yeah, well, I'd love to. I'm always looking for kindred spirits. So listen, before we kind of wrap up our interview, I'd like to have you share how people can find you and your work, and where they can connect with you directly and learn about the new book as it's, coming out, and
Yeah.
just how they can stay in touch.
Well, scottbarrykaufman.com has a lot of information and free resources. I have my podcast, which is free every Thursday, called the Psychology Podcast. I have, yeah, book Rise Above coming out in the end of April. I think April 24th, if my memory serves me correctly, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, around then. And I really hope it inspires people to even if you can't change the systems or the structures, the environment, change yourself. You know, there are things you can do to empower your own self.
Yeah. Well, we will look for it. As I said, I will be writing an article and sharing this and all the ways people can connect with you. And I hope we can continue staying connected, because clearly we are kindred spirits. And I'm sure some of the spirits will be people that if I don't know them, I'd like to. So let's definitely stay in touch.
I would love that. I really feel your compassion. It comes through even on Zoom.
Well, good. I'm glad. And I appreciate connecting with you. And I'll look forward to keeping it going.
Thanks. Thanks so much.
Okay.